You, what up? It's Chris from Black. You, what up? It's Chris from Black Land Ownership. We're doing well. And it, hear the birds, you see the blue sky out here. It was snowy and gray for a while, and since I'm able to be, I'm very happy to be out here working on some wood. So we got these slabs in the front yard. We picked them up probably a week or two right before it started, getting haywire with the weather. So I haven't been able to work on stuff. I'm still trying to remove the bark and the Cambrian layer from the slabs. We picked up these silver maples, and some of them are 10 feet long, and so I'm still taking off the bark on the side here. And I always wondered why you remove the bark. Like, why don't you keep the bark? It looks really cool. Like, if you're lucky enough to have these big old slabs. And what I keep hearing is, like, if you're gonna do natural wood and not like put all types of epoxy and other chemicals and stuff in it, that the animals love to be in the actual bark. That sure, there's some that are into the wood of the tree, or like termites or things that bore into the tree. But for the most part, a lot of the animals will end up being in the bark. And so if you want to make sure when you make furniture, you don't transfer those animals and insects into the client's house, you want to get all the bark off and the Cambrian layer, which is kind of a thin layer between the main part of the tree and the bark layer. But while I'm doing this, which is very fun for me, I don't know why, it's like, for some reason, very meditative to sit here and try to knock off bark from the side of big old tree trunks, and then to like dig out the crevices inside of it. But I just want to talk to people about like life and the beauty of the world around us, and to try to enjoy whatever it is that's going on. I know the world seems haywire. I know that on a daily basis, in a certain way, the love of humanity is tested, and we have to like reaffirm to each other that humanity is dope. But it is. And I just want to reinforce, like, ownership, one of the best parts of it has been the reinforcement and the proof to me of how awesome humanity can be. Like, in the past 7 years, we've traveled and been to so many places, like whether it's Maine, Florida, New York State, upstate, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, initially going out to Colorado, and more recently going to California, and going out to Nevada, Arizona, all these different places, and spending time in rural America. It has shown me that, like, we need to get out more. We need to actually spend time with people in these different places, because it's not just that, like, we're different identity-wise. I mean, really, I think a lot of the identity conversations are overlap with geographic isolation, and the reality is, like, we still live in a segregated world. And in doing Black Land Ownership, one of the coolest things is I'm meeting people from all over, and I'm getting to see the relationships. I'm getting to see the commonalities. I'm getting to see that a lot of these discussions shouldn't be partisan. A lot of the things we talk about, and when we think it's about Republican or Democrat, they really aren't. Like, if you are a person that is in the outdoors and you live off the land, wouldn't you want to make sure there isn't off the land? Wouldn't you want to make sure there isn't poison in the water that you're using to feed your livestock? Wouldn't you want to make sure that the grain or the feed that you're using to raise your livestock doesn't poison the people that eat your food? And so that's not a Republican or Democrat issue. Like, the idea of big industries building plants that then poison the air around those plants, and the people that live there don't get the economic benefit of those companies. That's not a Republican or Democrat issue. That's not like a liberal or conservative issue. The idea of, like, how expensive is food, or the idea of, like, who's able to grow food, and there's about to be an accident right here. So Amazon Prime about to cause an accident in my neighborhood. They totally wrong. I should tell everybody this person's license plate number, but I don't snitch on people. I'm not really into all that. But point being is, like, everywhere I go, I see the same issues. How do you get what you need? How do we manage resources? How do we balance the exchange of resources with commodification and ownership? And to me, that's not, again, a black or white issue. That's not a man or woman issue. That's not a Republican or Democrat issue. the does the food you eat poison you question is not a partisan issue. The idea of like, are your taxes high or not? I understand why that's turned into a partisan issue, but again, the real question is, what do you do with the taxes? So let's say we don't pay a whole lot of taxes, but can't get good medical care. Would I rather take some of that military spending and put it into healthcare without raising taxes? You know, is that possible? Can we talk about stuff like that? Like, how have we turned partisan in terms of healthcare? Like, why should all of us being healthy be a partisan issue? Why aren't both parties saying we should be able to have access to good healthcare no matter what part of the country you're in? And this like punishment motif of, if you're in a major city and you're a Democrat, then the Democrats will help support you and what you need done in major cities, but they'll forget about the people in rural areas. That's corny. And the idea that like if Republicans are in office or the people who are in office are conservative, that they're gonna take money away from cities and they're gonna try to shut down cities like what you see in Minneapolis, or like the government withholding from New York and New York City. Why do that? Why isn't the point that, sure, we need to represent our constituencies, but not on a partisan level of we only want to support the people who voted for us? That's corny. Like, I mean, think about high school. If the person who was running for class president was only going to support the seniors, you wouldn't vote for him. You vote for the person that says they're going to support all the folks, but obviously certain programs might benefit certain people more than others. But the whole goal is like a utilitarian, what is the best possible scenario for the most number of people that causes the least amount of harm? And one of the issues you run into is like, well, if it only harms a few number of people, then it's not really that bad. And I think with current technology and certain economic advances, there are ways for us to have what we need and to manage resources and not be so exploitative. When you're in a situation and people are literally making $4 billion, like, keep in mind, $1 million is like 100,000 times how much? And so $1 billion is 1,000 millions. Like, can you understand the concept of having $1,000 million, but you have $27,000 million? And there are multiple people in this country that have that much money. When you look at a place like California, and in California, you'll have people on the internet say that California is broke, or that any of the states with high taxes like New York are broke or what have you. And actually most of those states run on a surplus and they kick money back to the federal government. Whereas you look at states like Mississippi, Alabama, that have been historically Republican, they run at a deficit for decades. And so why should we give up on the South? Like me as a person, I live up north, I live in a city, but why shouldn't I care about Southerners that are in rural areas? Because some of them might be racist or some of them might be down with the KKK. That doesn't mean I should then forget about all the people who are in the South that aren't in those categories. And matter of fact, maybe I think that even people who are in the KKK should be able to get access to healthcare because they're humans, and that no matter what people do as humans, they deserve certain treatment. And that's irrespective of party. Like, I'm not concerned with party affiliations. I'm concerned with humanity. I'm concerned with, do you want to celebrate humanity? Are you trying to liberate other humans who may not have had the same freedoms you've had? Are you there to protect the vulnerable? And I don't see politicians trying to protect the vulnerable these days. I see the politicians siding with powerful, and that's corny. The last thing you need is powerful politicians siding with powerful other people, whether they are powerful business people, whether they are powerful real estate magnates, whether they are powerful politicians of other countries. What you want to do is have the politicians side with the people that are vulnerable. What you want to do is have the people with power, who have decision-making power, focus their efforts on bettering the world, not bettering themselves, not bettering their industries, not bettering their social networks, because they're already good. Now, I don't mean good in the sense of happy. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not suggesting that just having money or power makes people happy. But I'm talking about in terms of influence on the world around us. As of now, there are certain communities of people that have been marginalized, ostracized, and are currently vulnerable and experience life in a way that is more difficult than it needs to be, could be, and in my mind should be. And the people that have the power to fix that instead are siding with the other powerful people because they're afraid, or because they, like being greedy, or who knows why people do that. But whatever it is, when I look at politicians, I don't want to hear about what party they're a part of. I want to hear about how they champion humanity. I want to hear how they champion for the animals. I want to hear how they champion for the planet and the earth. I want to hear how they care about their grandparents and what's going to be the world for their grandkids. I want to hear about how in real life service and being compassionate and empathetic are important. Contemporary politicians are now, in order to keep up with Trump, learning how to be really mean and learning how to be really aggressive. And we're getting into that tit for tat form of politics where it's almost like we're on different sides instead of it's one humanity, and our goal is as citizens to pick the best representative of our individual needs, but also the needs of the community. So it's not supposed to be us versus them, it's supposed to be us, and then we choose politicians that best represent us as community, total community. And that could be your neighborhood, that could be your state, that could be you thinking of it as an American. I'm not going to dictate what that is, but for me, I'm not inherently aligned with the Republican or the Democratic Party. I'm aligned with when a person has sensible policy, I should support them. And right now, very few people have sensible policies. Let's talk about murdering kids in Palestine. Very few politicians have sensible policy on that. Let's talk about, should corporations have personhood? Very few people have good policy on that. Should there be unlimited donations from corporations to politicians? Very few politicians have good policy on that. What do you actually do with human migration? Not the migrant problem, but actually deal with the fact that the U.S. has destabilized and interfered with who knows how many other countries. And so most of the people seeking asylum here are coming from countries where the U.S. has meddled in their international affairs. So what's a reasonable way of managing the reality of that? None of the politicians have a good response to that at all. Don't forget the Democrats had little kids in cages at the border also. And the folks now definitely are not doing it in a humane way. So I think, why not move away from Democrat and Republican and move towards who does what makes sense? What politicians are saying things that bring power to your community? Not take the power and put it in the hands of people you'll never meet. Not take the power and decide you can't fight against. I mean, one of the most ridiculous things I've seen is a government legislation that would propose states can't stop the building of data centers. What do you mean? Why can't they have to? If we as community members don't want to be poisoned, we should be able to fight an industry popping up in an area where they're not wanted. That's capitalism. That's free market. And so whether you're Republican or Democrat, if you support local rights, you would not want data centers to be able to pop up wherever they want. You should be able to fight that if you don't want them there. I understand the idea of we don't want a whole lot of government regulation, but if the government is regulating us, like as a person, I have to walk around with ID to make sure I don't get snatched up by ICE, then the government's regulating. But we don't want them to regulate AI data centers being built that are going to poison our air, pollute the water, and use our water, and possibly raise the cost of our utilities. That doesn't make sense. And so it's not a Republican Democrat thing. It's not a regulation is bad thing. It's a look at your community. Is the healthcare getting better? Are the jobs coming more frequently? Is the pay for those jobs increasing? Are the benefits and healthcare coverages for those jobs getting better, getting more inclusive? Are your grandparents aging gracefully? Are your little kids able to go to preschool programs without you spending an arm and a leg? If you get sick, can you actually get off of work, not lose money, and go make sure you're healthy? These are not Democrat Republican questions. These are everyday life questions. And I want to see the politicians who care about these questions. Are there potholes in the road? Does the train work? Do we have buses so people can get around who don't have cars? Are we thinking sensibly about where money is directed in terms of civil and social services? How do you front end so that people don't have to go to jail, and where you spend however much money in order to keep people in jail, but do the education programs and the community programs? That's not Republican or Democrat. Like, if you're a parent, don't you want your kid to be able to play soccer? Don't you want there to be a park where they can go to? Don't you want the water to be clean? Like, how have these turned into Republican and Democrat like questions? Like, don't you, the birds chirping back here, like, wouldn't it be bad if they were all poisoned? And it looks like the companies will poison the birds if we don't regulate them. And so to me, that's not a Democrat-Republican issue. And me as a black person, I'm definitely not one that ascribes to the idea that I have to vote Democrat. I do not have to vote Democrat. I do not support any politician that doesn't support the community. But I also recognize we all have different situations. And so in building with people and trying to work with people from around the country, I want to remove myself from this notion of Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal. I want to deal with fresh air, clean water, healthy food, your parents and grandparents aging gracefully, being able to manage the property and whatever assets when they pass away, making sure your little kids when they go to school getting educated properly, making sure there's some early childhood education programs available. And I mean, none of that is Republican, Democrat. It's you see the beautiful world around us. Don't we want more time with it? All right, so check in. I got some work to do. We got these slabs out here. It's a nice day in DC, so I'm putting in work with the wood. I got to strip some of this bark off, as you see right there. I guess you all can join me for some of that. But I've just been thinking a lot, and I went to this melanoma conference the past couple of days, and I've been reinvigorated. Like, I'm always kind of hyped on humanity and society, and I think I tend to be relatively optimistic while being somewhat of a realist and cynic in other ways. But I like to think I'm optimistic. And so I'm feeling reinvigorated. I've been thinking a lot about the human connection and how many people do care and how many people are focused on spending time and putting effort into helping others, and how many people have contributed to the well-being of others. And I don't know if we talk about that enough. I don't know if we celebrate the fact that, like, politics and entertainment are not the only things that affect our lives, and that in real life, so many of the people that we're around have a great effect and are, without knowing it, very influential. But they aren't influencers. They aren't famous. They aren't on the news. They aren't being celebrated in the media, but they do cool stuff. And going to this conference that I went to, it reminds me of that. I was meeting healthcare professionals from all over the world who are trying to figure out ways to prevent, cure, treat, manage melanoma and other rare cancers. And so when you spend like 3 or 4 days talking to people that worked in a field that 30 years ago, there was no hope for progress for certain things. Like for certain types of melanoma 40 years ago, you had like a 80% chance of not living. And so when the chance is not in the percentage of living, but in the percentage of dying, that's a really bad cancer. And so when you think of Bob Marley, he died of a form of melanoma that at the time had no treatment that worked. Radiation didn't work, chemotherapy didn't work. It was almost like unless your body could self-heal, you were not going to survive it. And now 40 years later, 50 years later almost, there are 6, 7, 8 different possible therapies. And so meeting people who've been working in a field for 20 years, and when they tell you that when they started, there was no hope for certain people, and now they can look at people and say, oh, wait, you have 7 different options for treatment. That's going to be inspiring, you know? Like, that's going to be exciting. Like, when you talk to people who have that mentality of work on the same thing for 20 years to see incremental change and be excited, exuberant about it, because that incremental change means more people live, less people suffer, less pain for people, less toxicity in terms of reactions to treatments, more information for family members who are worried and who would like to know what data or research exists. And so, I don't know. So it got me thinking a lot about, let's celebrate more what humans have done well. I think a lot of times we celebrate the entertainment, we celebrate the sports, and LeBron James is awesome, and the hockey team went to the White House. But, I mean, I get it. I like sports. I like entertainment. But there are people who just teach at school. And I don't mean give them an award. I mean, just like remember your teachers and the people that inspired you to seek and explore life around you. Celebrate your family members. Celebrate your, the little kids that you see that smile and run around and don't know anything about the madness that we worry about. They're a part of the world too, yet they can be blissful at times and totally unaware of the things that have us stressed, and they're looking at us like, what's wrong with y'all? And then because of our stress, we sometimes take away those young people's joy. So sometimes maybe it might be as simple as, do we have to change the whole world? Or just remember, like when we see a young person, don't take away their joy. Matter of fact, use their joy to remind us that we were once them, and that we can run around yelling and screaming and just having a good time and don't need video games, don't need any of that. We have our imaginations, we have each other, we have the human experience. And I know in a time where like autonomy and personal space and making sure that you avoid negative influences is big, But humans are communal species. We do seem to do better when we are with others. And we do seem to have difficulty when we are isolated and alone. So I'm trying to remember that as I age and get older and get more grumpy and more persnickety and set in my ways, to still hang out with people and be willing to grow and change. So that's all I gotta say right now. I'm gonna holler at y'all. I gotta keep working.